So what we're actually here to learn about is that everyone thinks of video games as this brilliant thing full of energy and excitement, and they are. And then they go online and watch YouTube videos of people just freaking loving video games, having the greatest time in the world, and living off what they do with a passion. And we see the successful people out there, and they can do it, and we want to be one of them. But you need to know more than just what you are passionate about to make it in the video game industry, and especially in the world of streaming, and especially in the world of eSports. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to have a bit more of a digger deep into what the world is like out there and what it can do to you, but what you can prepare yourself for and how you can thrive in that world and make it out alive. So we've gathered a panel of people who live in that world, have lived in that world, but most importantly, they've learned their lessons from the world, and they're here to share it with you. So first off, we have Ali. Ali has grown through the world through cosplay, video games, streaming, and all that wonderful fun, and learned a lot of lessons. Took a bit of a break, but now feeling the urge to jump right back in? Yeah. And then we have Kat. Now, Kat is a great example of someone who's done it all. She has grown with a passion for video games and cosplay, and even threw herself into eSports, and learnt a lot of interesting things that she'll share some insights tonight.
Do I do that?
You can talk in the microphone, say yes or no, or what the hell.
Yeah, I'm going to do that.
Yeah. But what I'm really happy to have here tonight is that when it comes to streaming and esports and all that kind of stuff, to have people watching you and to follow you, you don't only have to think about video games. You can think about what people are passionate about. Dungeons and Dragons, for example, artistry. So we have Burries Red here, who along with Kat run their own D&D channel. So that's going to be a pretty interesting talk.
Absolutely.
There we go. And I'd like the person on the very far right, I'm going to have her introduce herself because she needs to both tell you her name, her position, and how many degrees she's doing at this university.
All right, I'll just bend down here. My name's Marissa. I am the president of the Adelaide University Esports Club, and I'm studying a double degree in aerospace engineering and mathematical and computer sciences.
Now, I needed her to do that all because she does all of that and still has the energy to play video games when she's not studying, which is pretty goddamn impressive. And for the youth out there, my God, you have energy. It's enviable. So what we're going to just do is just open it up and ask some questions to the panel and get a bit more insight into having strange voices talk to you through a speaker. They're going to introduce you to what their background is and a little about themselves with a very poignant question. For example, there is a voice talking to me there, right? I'm not going insane.
Are you okay?
I don't know anymore. So, Ali, a big question for you is, you went through the whole industry of streaming. You even got attached to a branded corporation. What would be your biggest takeaway from that time of your life?
So Alicia is my game handle. Ali is what I go by. So I was a streamer for Legacy Esports, one of, at the time, most prestigious esports organisation. They have now sold and rebranded as Kanga, but they had a very, very long history of League of Legends, most prominently, is what they were known for, and their team. Big takeaways are probably, this is cringe kind of to say, but how you present yourself and how you interact with people. The Australian scene and industry is very, very tight-knit. And also a lot of people that are quite high up across, from peripheral brands to managers at orgs and everything like that, are really charismatic, lovely people. We have just gotten back from PAX Australia, where we met up with a lot of people that we know in the industry, and you would have no idea that you're talking to a national sales manager, for example, because people in the scene have such a passion for it and will engage with you and talk with you just as another fellow person that's passionate on the scene. So I have found, as kind of cliche as it may sound, how you present yourself, how you talk to to people, how you interact with people, that is how you leave a lasting impression. My background was in cosplay, as Dusty said, and that's actually how I got involved in the scene, was working with Logitech as one of their cosplayers at PAX. Then I've also done official Riot work. And I've had opportunities that reputation and your hard work and how you present yourself carries a very long way. So having an ego is good. Having confidence in yourself is good. But you have to make sure that you're also leaving a good impression.
Damn good insight. And we might actually bounce it off with yourself there, Cat Roulette. You start off with some bloody fantastic cosplay. But on the side of cosplay, you're also a gamer, but you made the launch from... How did you make the launch from cosplay to gaming to being involved with Australian eSports?
Well, to be honest, they weren't that tied into each other. I was lucky that through cosplay I did meet a lot of people in the industry, and that is how, through those connections, I ended up getting my position. In 2019, was the house manager for Chiefs Esports Club, which was a time back when OPL existed and Riot cared about our region, allegedly. But yeah, it was sort of what Alicia said, that it's one thing leads to another. If you're good to people, if you're making friends. I think a lot of people think of networking as like climbing a ladder, but really in the end, like, if you make friends with people, those are the connections that are gonna last. And generally people can tell if you're not genuine. So if you're just speaking to someone or being nice to someone because you think that they can get you somewhere, generally they can tell. But if you actually make those real connections, they can legitimately lead to opportunities in the future. But yeah, I wouldn't say that cosplay got me into esports, but it's all in the same sphere.
That is good to know. Which I'm very glad you brought that up, because at the very end we're going to learn how university and esports can kind of gel together in ways as long as you don't worry about sleep or study too much. But which brings me to study, because Burrows Red here. Burrows runs a D&D streaming channel. Now, Burrows, if I could get your insight in what motivated you to start up D&D, and with a lot of streamers and esports out there, it's a one-man army, one-person army, where it's you in front of the screen, it's you playing the game, it's you doing everything, it's you doing your branding, your marketing. But D&D, that's a group activity. So what motivated you to get to D&D streaming, and how do you run it? Is it a one-person army, or is there a lot of different lieutenants you put your powers out to?
Yeah, fair enough. When you started with study, honestly, I thought you were going to ask me about my time here, and I was like, ooh. So I run a Wisdom Saves. It's a D&D community channel that I run beside Cat Roulette and also one of our friends, Mel, who is not here, and I love feedback. And together we created this kind of community channel to be able to showcase our games and kind of be able to show the collaborative side of D&D. Everyone's seen, or may have heard of at least, plenty of other D&D channels that tend to kind of create these wonderful stories and show off this camaraderie. And we felt that we were really good together. We thought, hey, we're really fucking funny, and that's really great. So we were like, hell, why not? Let's do it. When it gets to the nitty-gritties of everything and how that all works together, I work as the producer, so I run a lot of the streaming software, and also I tend to kind of help. It is always help organize the content schedule. That means usually shooting off a message to Mel and Kat and just being like, hey, should we do this thing? Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea, or else do it. But working together can be quite difficult. Not because anyone is difficult, they're lovely, they're wonderful, but schedules get in the way and things like that. Real life gets in the way. People might get sick or things like that. So it's a constant struggle to kind of try to work out how you're going to get things to work. And things like D&D, you might need everyone together. So it just kind of, you eventually develop the skills to be able to kind of work with any setbacks, work out how to make things work, and then create a wonderful product at the end that people like and they enjoy and they come back for more.
Do what you love and hopefully people join in.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And speaking of doing what you love, who is doing a 5-year degree? Sorry, I'm a Bachelor of Arts student, so to hear what you're doing just blew me away. So a question for you, Marissa. As the leader here of the eSports institution of Adelaide Uni, you're at the very start of an esport career, but Australia, and especially Adelaide, needs to support what you're doing more. Do you have a pathway in mind of what Australia can do to really lift up streaming and esports and that kind of industry, so when you graduate with your degree in aeronautical science, you can combine what you love with what you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is where Australia needs to get a national body to help and support esports pro league players to be able to, you know, take gaming to the next level. It plays a big part in academic support, to scholarships, to helping them get careers out of this, and networking and supporting them through their careers. And currently Australia does not have a national body that recognises esports players. So, for example, we have a player that we could send off to Brazil because they are really, really good at Valorant, but we are currently unable to do so because the competition requires them to be recognised that they are good. And unfortunately in Australia there's just no national body that does that, like other traditional sports. Yeah, that's pretty much sums that up.
Brilliant. The importance of having government be involved to help with the structure in, and corporations and brands to come involved and say, if I build it here at the ground level, it can get big. And Adelaide is incredibly fertile ground. We had Kat, who had to travel to Sydney to run the house. Kat, if you had that opportunity here in Adelaide, how do you think it would have gone any different?
I think obviously it's a lot more viable for people to, if they can do it in their hometown. Obviously Legacy was here for a while. They had their, I don't think they ever had a house here, but they had training facilities and stuff. So especially a lot of people getting into esports are quite young, like freshly out of school, often have never lived out of home before. And if they don't have to move to Sydney, which in my opinion is the worst place in Australia to move to, it's going to be a lot more viable for them. They're not going to have to like front all the expenses for a career that, especially when you're new to it, isn't necessarily going to pay a lot. So yeah, definitely if there's more like opportunity at home, there's going to be a lot more people who can take that up.
Brilliant. That's another big thing that you have to realise, that the Australian broadband network, as bad as it is, still gives us an opportunity to not have to relocate to play the games we love. It's only when we have to do something physical, like train as a team, that we do have to go where the team is, which is unfortunate. So my question now is down here to Marissa. In your dream scenario, you've created an esport team here in Adelaide. You're the manager. What do you specialise in? What game do you specialise in? What skills do you train them in?
Yeah, so this is a scenario I'm actually living in. In our esports club, we have a bunch of different teams that we enter into games, and we coach them. We bring in specialists, depending on the game, who are able to coach them in the skills that are needed for that particular game. For example, right now we're entering teams, the season's just finished, but we enter teams into the AEL League, for those who are familiar. We enter teams for Rainbow Six Siege, Rocket League, Dota 2, and can't remember the fourth one. CSGO, thank you. And yeah, so I think a big part is most of the players on our team have that adaptability to be able to move over to a different game, because sometimes games lose their demand, and if you specialize in that game and you can't play any other game and you want to take it to the next step and turn a career out of it, and that game dies, then for example, if you're a Twitch streamer, you're going to lose your content because you're waiting in queues for a game that's not going to be able to be played. So yeah, I think it's important to just adapt those skills so you're able to then move over to the next game, the next big thing, and just, yeah, move around. Yeah. So
flexibility.
Yeah, definitely.
You want to create a house of flexibility that when something dies, it can grow again. Yeah. That's good for life and gaming. But when we talk about what does it take to be a gamer, in this world, you have to be able to pay rent or buy a house, and you have to be able to feed yourself. And with that, like we're talking about, the ability to just have money to fund this industry is crazy important. But then also the ability to have positions open to get in there is rather cutthroat. Would you all agree? It's a bit cutthroat to make sure you can live this. And one of the most powerful things you can be as a gamer out there, as a streamer, as a Let's Play, is that you have your own brand. And a brand that separates you from everybody else. So when things are happening, people can look at you and go, you know what? I reckon they'd drink a Red Bull on screen. I'm gonna make sure they can buy food this week. So I'm just gonna go down the line, and if you could think deep in your soul and tell the crowd here, what is the most important thing you've found to your own personal brand? And in that I mean, what can you look into yourself and go, this is my brand, I'm not selling myself out on anything, this is something genuine which I want to share to the world, and I can turn that into a part of my brand?
Well, I think that word genuine in terms of branding to me is most important for sustainability and longevity of a career where you are camera facing. It's something that you see when even looking at an esports athlete or a pro player, that the ones that then go on after their careers of playing and are succeeding in other fields, they have cultivated a brand that people like following them for them. I know I'm not the only one in my streaming and content creation that does variety, so I'm not specifically a gamer, although I do play a lot of video games. I don't lock myself down to one specific game. I find that it is easy to then sustain if I'm just myself, and you have showmanship, you have bits and pieces that you will exaggerate or might react a little bit more vibrantly because you are an entertainer if you are streaming it on screen. It's still how I would react to something. I'm not having to carefully curate essentially a lie or an alias or just this is solely who I am on screen and then you would not recognize me off screen. It's me that is just streamer me. So I'm not going to have a random hot take that doesn't align with what I actually think. I'm not going to just slog it out and play a game that I have no passion in just because it's popular, because that's just not going to be sustainable. If you're doing things solely for the moment, I think this is going to be super, super popular, so I need to get on it, and then you hate every second of it, you might succeed for a while, but it's going to be so hard to seem like you really care and invested in it for the long run. So if you can find the parts of yourself that you enjoy sharing and you enjoy having on camera and stick with that, and you don't have to make sure you're doing X, Y, Z. For me personally, that has been the easiest way to have an online presence.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same. I have, I guess, a bit of like a gremlin brand. I kind of just like say or do whatever I regularly would. And not like unprofessional, but I'm definitely like a lot less polished than, say, Alicia. So I think that definitely, like, for me personally, obviously there are people who are really successful with like cultivated personas and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that would just be exhausting, and it's not really my thing. So yeah, I'm just me, and that's pretty much it.
I mean, I think also like the thing that I find the most important about branding is in a similar vein. I can tell you, I have like spreadsheets sitting at home. I have like a whole branding kit where I can tell you like the color codes for all of my different brands and all that kind of stuff. None of that stuff is super important. However, it's something that I have definitely invested the time into. However, I always feel like the one constant thing to all of your content is always going to be you. So even if you invest a bunch of time into a game or something like that, you invest all your time into whatever it happens to be, if it's art, if it's D&D, if you then need to pivot for whatever reason, you're still going to be the head of that content. You're still going to be in that content. So it's important to show you first and foremost and have people expect what they're going to expect from you. And if that is natural, if that is passionate, and that's what you're putting forward, you're putting through your genuine self, then you can't really go wrong on a branding front, because people are going to know exactly what to expect from you, and they're not going to be short-sighted by any decisions that you make if you do choose to go down different paths?
For me, I found that when I used to stream, consistency in the sort of types of games I played was a big thing. For example, I'm an FPS player, but if I went and played like another game, I found that's when my audience sort of shifted and people didn't really identify as me, because people know when I play FPS games, I have pretty big reactions, I get jump scared easily, and I think that was like a big thing towards my brand when I used to stream on Twitch. And yeah, and sometimes I would make like a meme out of it with just me getting jump scared, or I would do like fun little things like purposely playing the game bad. For those who know siege ranks, like I tried to become like Copper Queen once, which became like a big thing. And just stuff like that really contributed to like my brand, just like the consistency and the type of games that I played. Yeah.
Be yourself. Actually, I did like your answer right there, is because we all talked about being genuine, finding your true self and using that, and also very good planning. But you brought up memes, memeing yourself. Now, what motivated you to turn yourself to memes? Is that to further your brand, to communicate on more illustrative levels?
Yeah, so I'm not sure, but for those who are very experienced with FPS games, I think you can all kind of gather the type of audience it is and for how it is for women trying to play an FPS game. So instead of like accepting hate, I turned the hate into a meme and became Copper Queen. And it was like a big thing. Like I would jump in a lobby and it like became a whole community of my meme of me being Copper Queen, and I'd be like, oh my god, in the chat it would be people typing, is that Copper Queen? So like it became a big thing. I just turned the meme into my brand for that period of time when I was playing Siege. But yeah.
Hey, if it works, it works. Now, I'm a gamer, but I'm outside looking in. So I'm on the outside. I see all you guys doing great work, and I've seen you doing great work for nearly decades, over a decade now. But we're here to actually learn what it is, what does it take to be a gamer? What does it take to be able to survive? What does it take to fail and then pick yourself up and go? And that's something I can't ask the really, really in-depth questions in, because you'd have to have gone through it to ask them. So I'm going to pass the microphone to Ali here, and she's going to ask some pretty deep questions, or light questions, to our panelists, and we're going to get I think we're going to see some real insight in a very unique location.
I'm definitely going to ask questions. So we wanted to as well with this panel, there's so many facets to the industry of esports. There's not just the player base of the pros that we watch. There is so much that goes in behind the scenes, which Marisha would know, to have support and get to the point where you have a player on screen. There's also then pivoting into content creation, whether that be live streaming, YouTube content, just using socials to promote just through photos and then gaining opportunity through that. But then also the hardships that come with that. Australia in general, comparative to NA as a region, for example, we are limited in our opportunity that we have. So it is exceptionally cutthroat. And I think something that isn't always looked at is when you're wanting to be a pro player, the reason that some people will refer to it as an esports athlete is just like if you were going to play AFL professionally, you were wanting to go over and play NBA professionally, there is only a certain amount of seats at the table for you to be a pro athlete. And so that comes with a little bit of mental health hardship as well. It can be a really, really difficult thing to just be trying as much as you can. Sometimes, for some people, your skill cap will just never be high enough to get on the main stage. That is just the brutal reality of it. But as with the experience that many of us have here, there are definitely other roles, positions, and opportunities that you can pivot from looking at being a pro player to still being in an industry that you love. Because, I don't know, is anyone here watching League of Legends Worlds at the moment? Anyone up as well?
One guy.
Yeah. So Kat and I, and we dragged our friend Haley up as well, were watching today. League of Legends World Cup is on. It's in America, so we were up at 8 o'clock to watch it, which is great. When you are looking at pick and bans, there's not just the players on stage. You have coaching staff, you have analysts, you have so many people behind. And so this is for anyone that wants to give insight. Even as streamers, we are working with programs, we are working with our stream setup, and that is skills that bleed in. What is probably the most unusual skill that you have acquired through streaming that you didn't think would be involved in it? If that's technical support, if it's just learning how to speak good on camera or speak to yourself. I'm sure all of us have had many times where there hasn't been really chat movement and it's up to us. What is just like a valuable skill, I guess, then that you've been able to either use or you've gained that you can apply to other things that you think would be helping in the industry as well?
I didn't realize how much you can actually do in a live stream. If you think about it, you've got your streaming software, you've got your chat, you've got your overlays. If something breaks and then you're like, oh my goodness, I'm right in the middle of something, and you're trying to play a game on top of that as well, trying to be entertaining, being like, is this stretch of time where I'm not saying anything, am I being boring? And then you're like, oh, there's my viewer count. Someone left. Do you think that was because it was something I did wrong? It is amazing the amount of things that you need to juggle when you are in front of a camera, and especially when you get into something where it's maybe community focused or something like that, and you start to think about all the different things that go along with that. Being able to kind of ride the ship and kind of, I think one of my last supervisors explained this to me really well. You try to be like a swan. On top, you are composed and elegant and fantastic, and underneath you have a tiny little rudder that's like going very furiously. It's great to think about all those things. It's great to manage all of those different things, but ultimately you just need to work out what you're going to prioritize with your own content. And I apply those skills in all sorts of different facets of my life, outside of streaming, but mostly in streaming as well.
I'm sorry, but by a rudder, do you mean their feet?
Yeah, well, does no one else think of the swan feet as like little rudders? Because it's just like... No? Okay, all right, it's just me. Okay, all right.
I would say, sorry, I'm on the mic. Being able to adapt quickly is a skill that I have learned from like streaming. For example, when something goes wrong, you sort of like got to quickly try and solve it on the spot rather than like, oh, hold on guys, I'll come back in like an hour. I mean, sometimes you need to, but like being able to solve those like technical problems on the spot is definitely like a key thing. And adapting like your channel, for example, I'm not good at art at all, but I found a lot of people like had issues with like my stream overlays because they didn't like the way it looked. So I think a skill I had to learn from streaming was how to come up with good channel art, and like actual like emotes as well was a big like critique of my channel because people just didn't like my generic emotes. So I had to learn how to like design, and so that's when I hopped on Canva, which is like the easiest designing tool to use. And yeah, that's just a skill. Yeah.
Overlays are hard. I'm constantly changing those. It's a difficult thing.
I'm an artist and I hate doing overlays.
Graphic design it's completely different aspect to art entirely. I can't do graphic design to save my life.
Not my passion.
Not at all.
My skill isn't really obscure or like special, but just talking to people. I'm shit at talking to people, and well, I was a lot worse at it, and now I'm a lot less shit. Not that I'm displaying that particularly well right now. But just like, obviously on stream you have so much time and like, if you're not speaking, dead air to fill. So just being able to like think and talk at the same time, which seems like a very generic thing to do, but I obviously struggle with it, is like probably the biggest skill that I picked up, which then eventually like when I was like working in cosplay and so like having to speak to people all the time, just being able to like have a conversation with someone and make my words good that's probably been it for me.
And that is something that definitely translates in the communication. I mean, it makes sense. Communication in a lot of fields will be a very, very strong point. And I guess production really is both, even with like overlays, channel art, like you were saying, Burrows, how much you can do. Again, it is another area that can be pivoted into in terms of the industry of esports, watching any production, whether it's like IEM, World's going on at the moment for League. There is a huge team behind making sure you have all of the feeds of the players, you have the cameras changing, you have people that are tracking on the map movement that's happening in game. So that is definitely something that is valuable and can be translated to not just streaming and content creation, but other fields. And then, of course, interviewers, communication. You have with players like you would with a traditional sport athletes having interviews after games. I think as well, all of us with experiences with streaming and have either now stepped away from or only just coming back to after a break or have pulled back. Burrows, you mentioned viewer count and things going down.
Don't look at it. Don't
Turn
have
it
it
off.
up. You should see viewers hidden in the top left-hand corner of your OBS, or you're not doing it right. Not really. But whichever way that you feel is most appropriate. But I cannot look at it. I will obsess over why this one particular number has gone down, why it's gone up, and I just spend too much time thinking about it. It's very bad for me. However, I know that there are lots of people that use influxes of people coming into their chat to kind of amp up their energy a little bit so that they can have a great first impression for someone who might coming in, especially with Twitch currently. YouTube, I believe it is a little bit better with this, with the way that they handle their ad system with pre-rolls for Twitch. Seeing someone come in to your chat is different because they may not stay if they get hit with like a 3-minute ad on Twitch. YouTube a little bit better as far as I'm aware. But yeah, like it can be a really great tool depending on the way that you want to use it. I personally don't go anywhere near it.
And I guess as well, just in general mental health with being on screen every day. So you can successfully, there are many people who have successfully had careers in streaming with not showing your face. I'm sure we would definitely have people here that have been aware of Dream in the Minecraft sphere, who has recently shown their face. Wildly successful up until, well, still is, but then faced huge amounts of criticism when he revealed his face, which is bizarre, in my opinion. But it just goes to show that there are stress factors, there are criticisms, no matter how insanely popular you are, and no matter how good your content is, this content creator, I'm just going to rag on him because this dude that looks like a white dude, I don't think he looks like I want him to look, so huge amounts of hate for no reason. So in terms of being on camera or having streams where you're not on camera, in terms of mental health in general around it, how do you find you cope with that, and what things do you put in place, whether it's things like going on a break? Kat and I have had a break from streaming recently, or anything else around that to keep yourself sane or lean into the insanity in a healthy way.
As far as handling it, I would say not well. I've been on break for 1.5 years now. I also dropped off the face of our D&D streams, but I will be coming back to them shortly. I think if I came back to solo streaming, which I don't have any like direct plans to do right now, I would do it as a VTuber. Because for me, a big part of the stress is physically like being on camera and having to be like switched on the whole time because like I don't know what I'm doing with my face most of the time. And yeah, I think like especially with VTubing at the moment, there's so much opportunity. Like you don't have to physically be on screen if you don't want to. So that's an option. I can't remember the question, but.
I have to know. You said that you make memes. Were they often like face reactions? You said you have big reactions.
So I was an anonymous streamer, and so the memes were more of like clips of like things I would say during my stream. Yeah.
Oh, I've absolutely been. I stream with a webcam, and there were many a times I would make a fun face, and they now get used as emotes in my Discord. So Yeah, it definitely does happen. Managing having a webcam on stream is interesting. I kind of approach it with I look how I look and I'm just going to go for it. But you might have remembered, maybe it was around about last year, the pandemic has kind of mixed together months and things all as one. But there was a time where Pokimane came out with a picture of her not in makeup, and there was a bunch of backlash about it for no real reason. And generally that brought up a conversation about like expectations of different people for how they present on stream. And personally, I've always approached that as I just show up looking like I do. I generally don't wear makeup. You're lucky, I did it today. But I don't often usually do that. And it just kind of doesn't factor into an important aspect of the stream for me personally. And if that is something that's holding you back, there are options like VTubers. There's PNG tubers. I use those relatively recently as like just a kind of short emote looking thing that kind of will change as it goes around, as you speak, I should say. And you can be really loud and then it does different faces and things like that. They're kind of fun and a little bit of a different avenue to go down if you don't want to show your face.
Yeah, I definitely went down the avenue when I was peaking my streaming of not showing my face, because I got a lot of hate of being a woman in an FPS game. And so I had like a lot of anxiety around all the hate and people finding out who I was. So I decided, just for the better mind for myself, just to go down the anonymous route. And I would try, it definitely though did increase my anxiety, because I had to be careful if I was definitely streaming with friends that we wouldn't say things that could like give me away, which every now and then we'd all slip up and say something, but like we all did our best to try and, you know, keep the anonymous factor. Yeah.
And pivoting back to, because we've done a little bit on content creation in general, but getting into, I guess, the first steps into pro playing with video games. None of us here on panel, sorry, I'm speaking for you here, Marissa, have had the goal necessarily that I want to be the best at this particular game in the world, but have experience with talking to players or knowing people or just being up to date with the industry. Marissa, I'll start with you. What do you think, because obviously you have a big role in helping cultivate people that are wanting to get into the scene. I know it will vary a little bit depending on game, but what kind of skill sets in terms of play base, either like putting things in place, like making sure you have X amount of games a week, or what kind of they should invest in and spend time on initially when wanting to take that first step of, I'm a good elo or rank, maybe I want to consider now pursuing this as a career option?
Yeah, so I think when people approach us and they want to start getting into the more professional field of gaming, we look at their rank, we do a couple like test runs, see how they play, and it also like depends on how many hours they have on the game. Like I've had someone come up to me and they have had like 20 minutes of one game and they want to be professional, and it's like, play it just a little bit longer and see if you like it and want to stick around for it. So I think it really just depends on also like what type of game. Like my main field is FPS, as I've mentioned, so like most people I've talked to can cross FPS games, like jump from like Valorant to CS and Apex to Rainbow Six Siege, that sort of stuff. So I think when they come to us, we talk about, you know, developing your skill set, what's your DPI on your mouse, that sort of stuff, what's your KD if it's an FPS game, and just how, like, what's their rank also in correspondence to their KD. So like if you got to Plat and Siege but you have like a 0.4 KD, it kind of shows us that you might have had the support of your teammates to get to that rank. So it's about also being a team player, but also you can stand on your own and you can play it if you're in that situation in the game that you need to be able to, yeah. And so it's just about working on those skills.
Very, very valuable to have that foundation there. And moving into just like around the scene as well, because unfortunately the three of us don't have player and cultivating player experience. But Kat, you were in a team house and helping run. don't need to go into super in depth, but can you give like just a bit of insight as into how much goes into prepping a player? Because you would make sure they were eating, because you can't trust a house of gamers to feed themselves if they're not reminded sometimes, but also coordinating, getting to play, how much they'd scrim. Like there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, well, our players, they would scrim from Monday to Thursday, and then they would play in studio Friday and Saturday, and then they would have one day off for Sunday. The reason I had to make sure they ate is because they had extremely long scrim blocks. So they would have the daytime ones, and then they would have, I think, maybe like a half hour to hour break, and then they would have like another like 5-hour block, approximately. And they didn't often have time to feed themselves in that time, or if they did, they wouldn't make anything good, so I would make sure that they did eat. But also, it's just like a very grueling schedule to be playing games for that much of your time. They also have to obviously do like VOD reviews and stuff, like not only of their scrims, but then the games that they would play in the studio. So, what was the question?
Just how much goes into it.
Oh, yeah. So really, like, outside of that as well, they would all play solo queue. So it's just like, if you're not playing your scrims, if you're not playing on stage, you're playing solo queue. So pretty much all they did was play games and sleep, and I would feed them.
So that's, again, the parallels to professional athletes of traditional sport. There's a lot of training that goes into it. There is, I think you can apply this to most fields, but definitely natural raw talent, if you want to put it that way. But so much goes into then refining it and polishing it, and like you say, just hours upon hours on end with just the Sunday. That was the only day off.
Yeah, but they would play solo queue all day.
Queue. Yeah, so that they maintain their own personal rank as well as team standing. So in terms of, and this can apply to either working with people wanting to get into the industry, or even just with friends that are in the scene, or content creation in general, what kind of support structures do you think there is? I know for me personally with streaming, because it can be grueling for different, not because I would be scrimming for that many hours, but it can be very stressful to try and coordinate things, even sometimes coming up with new ideas to have on stream. A huge part of my support network, to put it that way, is talking to friends that are both streamers, because obviously keeping up to trends is important, but even just talking to regular viewers or something to see what they're enjoying. What do you think, either support that you've given that you think is valuable to give, or something that has been a lifesaver in terms of support that's been given back, or applying to players, an important thing that can be given to players as well when starting out?
I think definitely with our esports club, for people who want to get into competing in tournaments, we support them in the sense that we handle all the administrative sides. So we enter them into the tournament. We chat with the managers of the tournament or the admins if there's like an issue during the tournament. So they don't have to stress about that, and they only have to stress about, actually showing up to the game and showing up to practice runs and that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think a big thing from our club is supporting the players in terms of administration. Yeah.
Absolutely. In terms of like a community management kind of perspective, we do similar kinds of things, except on a very less formal kind of way. We usually try to be there for each other, us three as the head of the kind of channel and things like that, are often looking out for our players and things in sense of monitoring our chat, making sure that everyone's okay, checking in. We have a lot of safety tools in place. If you know a lot about D&D, that's the kind of stuff that we have implemented. And people are able to kind of keep an open conversation with us about, hey, I'm not going well at the moment or whatnot. We just really try to kind of talk about things as much as we can and try to support them as best we can, whether that means we finish early, whether that means we schedule in new games and things like that. Recently, Alicia, as one of our players as well, ran a Monster of the Week campaign because I was suffering a little bit. I was like, hey, I've been DMing for a number of years now, please give me a break. And I was very, very lucky to play in that short campaign there as well, which was wonderful. I do highly recommend watching that as well. But yeah, essentially the greatest thing that you can do as a support system is to be able to support each other. We have the formal support of our team at the top with us who run the Wisdom Saves channel, but you do also have the support of the players and everyone else, and also your supporters too, in a less obligatory sense.
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think it's having your friends and also your community. Having that sort of like overarching community, both of like people who do the sort of thing that you do and also who like engage in it, is really important. A lot of my viewers became my friends, so it all kind of merged together. But yeah, as far as like support system, just like surrounding yourself around people who are into the same sort of stuff you are, I guess. I don't know.
I have felt very lucky to be with a lovely panel with varied experiences and different opinions that we can give, and hopefully we've been insightful, but we are not mind readers. So I'm going to throw out, if anyone has a question, if there's something we haven't covered that you think that we would have insight into, that we could elaborate a little bit, throw out if anyone in the crowd has a question at all.
So I know you've got experience with Riot and
Yes.
them leaving hosts.
Yes.
Do you have any expectation of them coming back, or conversely, any other orgs and game developers leaving hosts?
So as to if Riot, if we're going to get an office again, Riot OS, or a league coming back, I am hopeful, but I do not want to set any expectation. There was a tweet, so they are having... there was a tweet, very ominous to start, but they do have for production, they're coming back, but it is not in the capacity of necessarily coming back with a pro league. So we have been fortunate that our region has done its best without Riot support, but sadly, something that I can't change is the population of Australia. And so just as a region, we are just simply not as profitable, which is sometimes means that not as much interest for companies. But from development side, I mean, for example, Team Cherry, if anyone's played Hollow Knight or Silksong has just come out, wonderful, Adelaide-based dev teams. So there are other opportunities in gaming space, and then we do have wonderful tournaments that are being run without necessarily official backing, although there is the recognition that Chiefs were just at Worlds, that they can still play. But if anyone else?
Well, yeah, obviously I don't have any insight into what Riot is planning, but I personally wouldn't expect too much. But obviously ESL is doing an incredible job of like running the professional scene in the absence of that. So yeah, who can tell? But at least we have options. Like there's not a complete void of like a community here. So
yeah, and I guess I unfortunately have no FPS knowledge. Even Valorant, which is Riot Games, I'm just shocking, so I don't really dabble in the scene. But I know with having MEO, and we did have IEM for FPS games, we do still have quite a few tournaments that are Australian-based, correct? So if you...
Yeah, there's a big demand for them, but unfortunately there's just like not a lot of tournaments out there for FPS games. Like we have AEL for Rainbow Six Siege and CS, and then we come to Valorant, and there's a huge demand for Valorant tournaments, and we've put on our own Valorant tournament to try and meet that demand for players in South Australia universities. But there's just an even bigger demand for, you know, larger scale tournaments as big as AEL, and there's just not much out there. I know Lenovo, they did run they ran an Apex tournament and a Valorant tournament for about 5 weeks, but I don't think it had like enough advertisement to be able to get that demand of players to, you know, bring it up to the next level. Yeah.
Did we have any other questions out in the crowd? And hopefully, I hope that answered your question as much as you would desire. But did we have any other questions? Anyone? I'm going to take that as a pat on the back that I think we've done a pretty bloody good job in answering questions.
Yeah, that's definitely it.
Yeah. And now we're going to throw back to Dusty. I believe we have some trivia which the correct answers will be attached to free beverages.
Brilliant. So we're going to bring Tom to the front of the stage with some prizes. All right, now looking at the crowd, I can already see one man right here with an Avcon hoodie. So clap if you're somehow connected to Avcon if you've been. Oh, there we go. So that was to know who are going to be the people who know most of the answers to the questions. Now I'm going to throw to the panel, and this panel will take turns asking a nerdy question. Not too nerdy. And whoever gets who yells at the question with the hand raised first wins themselves something fun. So I'll start. Okay, what's a good one? In the game Lilac Wars on Nintendo 64, this is for the olders in the crowd. In the game Lilac Wars on Nintendo 64, who can remember something shouted out by a team member to another team member on screen during a battle? Yell it out. It's in your memory. Maybe you want to do some sort of flight maneuver. Yeah, do a barrel roll. Come forward and get yourself an awesome thing.
Okay. Okay. This will be based on what games people play, I suppose. Well, probably one that I would assume quite a few people would be able to answer at least, is what does Avcon stand for? So, you already got a drink, let's try. I can ask another one if you want. Okay. This is a have you been paying attention question, because we did mention it when we were admitting to the fact that unfortunately we have League of Legends brain rot. Where is the League of Legends World Cup being held at the moment? Correct.
By the way, that TV show is far too, a TV show based on a video game should not be that good, but it's bloody fantastic.
No, actually, I do. It should be that good because if you're basing off a video game, you have a huge amount of artwork, lore, and source material to work with.
True, but I was also there to see the first Mario Bros. Movie.
True.
Good one. Alright, so, did Arcane win an Emmy, yes or no? Did Arcane win an Emmy? Was it so good it won an industrial prize being good? 50 chance. Did it win an Emmy?
Can I answer?
No. Wrong.
Do we have, whether you play League or not, do we have anyone in the, or how many people have watched Arcane? Okay. Who is the older sister in Arcane? Yep. I know.
On the end, you've got the study, you know your nerd stuff. Come on, this is it.
Me.
You're up.
Oh no.
Double degree, running eSports at uni. This is
Trying to think what How many people here play Rainbow Six Siege in the crowd? No one? One question? Alright. Maybe I just ask an easy question. What is the highest rank in Siege? No. Oh, there's like a word before that. No, that's the lowest rank. Anyone? No? Damn. Okay, I guess I'll just say the answer then. It's champion.
I guess one. Do we have any fighting game fans? I was going to because there is an invitational happening for Smash Melee. Just name a character that you can play as in Smash Melee.
Kirby.
You can, yeah.
Okay, 2 last questions.
Okay.
Cat and Boris. So you get a question each.
Ask a D&D question.
Sorry, can I have a D&D, Boris, can I have a D&D question from you?
I will.
Oh, well, does anyone here stream? Are you streaming software? Okay, well, this is probably not a very good question then.
Maybe not.
Never mind.
All right. If you have ever played, has anyone here played D&D? Yeah. Okay, all right. Oh, now I got to think of something harder. All right, we know what a DM means, right? Yeah. What does a PC mean in D&D context? Pretty. I mean. Yeah.
Okay, this is just a really easy question because I have to ask one. What does CSGO stand for? You can't answer. What does CSGO stand for? Oh.
And with that amount of fun, we now conclude another eSports Summit here at Adelaide Uni. There you go, my good man. Thank you all for coming out and learning not only about what it does take to be a gamer, what it takes to stream, but also the journey that you can go on if you decide, you know what, I'm going to give this a go, see what happens. But most importantly, we didn't just talk about how fun video games are, and they are fun. But we also talked about what it can do to you and how you can market yourself, how you can brand yourself, and most importantly, how you can look inside yourself and go, you know what, I think this is special about me, and I'm genuinely passionate about it, and if I can take that passion, I can pretty much do anything and go anywhere if I put the hard work in and if luck is on your side. And apparently don't move to Sydney. So thank you very much. Panelists up, it's time for a bow. Round of applause. Thank you, and thank you, good night, and check out AvCon. It's happening at some point. We'll let you know. Hooray!